Hey, now it's the Rob from 106.1 KISS FM here with my tag team partner in podcasting.
What's up? Eric Cornish here with WKDQ. It is the Enhancement talent. We're going to talk some wrestling today. We're going to give you a chance to win some WWE Smackdown tickets. And we're going to reveal the Enhancement. It's well overdue.
We have a lot to get to today.
All right.
Should we start with the winner of Monday's contest?
Yes, we will. Let's do that first before we announce what's coming up.
Right.
We've got Jim Hines of Newburgh.
Congratulations, Jim Hines. Yeah. Awesome job. Thanks for watching. Thanks for entering. And of course, we're going to have a new password for you to enter in today's little box later on the show today.
Yeah, and when you see that word, you're going to enter it, and you'll have a chance to win 2 tickets to Smackdown in the Enhancement Talent section, and a chance to also be a part of the special things we have if you're the grand prize winner. And we're actually going to reveal some new information about that coming up. But the other thing we're going to reveal is the very first Titantron video for the Enhancement talent.
Listen, the credit to this goes to Eric Cornish, who put together this great Titantron video / intro for our show. And we figure what better time to debut it than what, right now?
Yeah, let's do it. Here it is, the debut of the Enhancement Talent Titantron video.
My goodness, Eric, that was something.
It makes us look a whole lot tougher and cooler than we really are.
I think so too. That hit the spot. That made me feel good all over.
Did it put us over? That's what we want to know.
Well, hopefully not too much, because we are supposed to be Enhancement talent.
That's true.
Okay, so should we move on to today's topic?
Yeah, let's do it. Our topic today, we got to talking in the hallway. We were kind of discussing some different things and talking about Taz, who is now apparently no longer with TNA in the broadcast booth.
That could be good for Taz.
Maybe, yeah. There's different things that could open up for him in WWE if he chooses to go back and if they choose to have him back.
Do you think?
Well, it could be things like he could go back to the announcing desk there. Maybe even more importantly, he could go back to Tough Enough since Tough Enough is coming back.
Now that's a better fit for him. I never ever liked Taz in the booth. Never liked him as an announcer. Now,
not
I will
one
say
of the best, but
he's
not one of the worst either.
I would say a small step above Booker, but to be honest with you, I think I'd rather have Byron Saxton in there than Taz.
Depending on what day it is for Byron, he had a rough couple of weeks, but yeah, we'll see what happens with Taz. But one thing we know that Taz does have to fall back on is his podcast.
And he enters a very crowded arena filled with other former wrestling podcasters.
But they all seem to do well, and that's the thing that, you have podcasts that just involve, just journalists like ourselves and, maybe a step higher than ourselves, but guys like Wade Keller, Dave Meltzer, and guys like that, definitely people lower than our level. But then you have some of the stars, and those are the ones that people tend to gravitate toward. Like Taz, who's kind of new in the game, but there's some other folks out there, and we decided we discuss some of them and who we like, who we don't like. And
you're a bit more in tune with these than I am. I think you listen to more. So first of all, I think that it probably goes without saying that the leader in wrestling podcasts is easily the Enhancement talent.
Definitely number one. Yeah.
If you want me to
go ahead and get that out of the way.
Do you want to start with the biggest? Because there's one that I think leads the pack.
And I think I know what you're going to say, and I would tend to agree with you to a point. Lately, not so much, but go ahead.
The best former wrestling podcast is Steve Austin's.
Okay, and that's where I thought you were going. Definitely the first one that I really gravitated toward. But I will say this about Steve Austin. 2 shows a week for Steve, probably too much. With as much as he seems to have going on.
Well, here's some things that Steve does well and some things that he doesn't do well. For starters, he gets the big name guests. He does a great job of getting guests because of his name. Secondly, when he's interviewing those guests, he does a very good job. interviewing. When he is talking on his own, or talking about hunting, or talking about anything besides wrestling, I find it to be unbearably boring.
He has his moments, and it depends on what he's talking about. If he's talking about some road stories, yeah, he can be interesting to talk to. Yeah, I'm not a big hunter, so kind of talking about his hunting stuff and the thing out on his ranch, not so much.
Well, and remember what people are coming to your podcast for, Steve. They're coming for the wrestling. You're talking to wrestling fans.
Right, and I'm sure they can tell by the downloads, if you've got a wrestling name on there, you're going to get more hits than if you have somebody outside of the business or, when you're on there by yourself. And that's the problem I've had with Steve lately is if you look at his last few months of podcasts, he's got a lot of time where he's just on by himself and doesn't have the guest as much as he used to. And that's a problem. And that may show that maybe you shouldn't be doing 2 a week, especially if you're doing movies and you're doing TV shows and all these other appearances. I think that has hurt the Austin podcast. But I do like him as a host. He's a very just natural, just gift of gab type of guy. And he's not an interviewer per se, but I like the way he relates to his guests.
I would just amend what you said. I would say he's a great interviewer, not a great host.
Really?
Personally. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
There's a few other ones that I'm more familiar with. I've listened to a handful of Chris Jericho's, and he's not bad. He's not as good as Austin, but he's better than a few of some of the competing wrestling podcast shows. He can also get a little out there when not talking about wrestling, but I'd rather listen to Jericho talk about his life than I would Austin about his.
And personally, in my opinion, out of all of the interviews I listen to, I think Chris Jericho is the best interviewer, and could be a type host interviewer for any mainstream show. I think he's very, very good at that. Mm-hmm. And he tends to get now he goes back and forth between the wrestling guests and guests in like the rock and roll world and movies and stuff, and that's fine. And all his guests are pretty relevant, I would say. Mm-hmm. He never really has just a lag in guests where he's just on by himself. And I do enjoy listening to him. Now his skits that he does on his own. A little cheesy. His cowbell stuff can get long and annoying.
There's sometimes where he thinks he's funnier than he is.
Right.
And he definitely suffers from that.
Yeah, but that on Chris Jericho's end, I think he's got a very good podcast. I'm very happy with that. And to me, it's right up there with Steve.
To me, he's the silver medalist, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. So after that, there's a few more. Jim Ross has a podcast.
Yeah, Jim Ross, I will say,
he's got a little foul mouth.
Definitely does.
Yeah.
And he definitely has an interesting sense of humor and a lot of times he can just drag on what he's talking about. He loses his place. He likes to tell his stories and not necessarily listen to the person he's interviewing, which is weird because he seems to be the one broadcaster that you would think would be
he'd
good
be the most professional.
But I will say this about Jim Ross: he has the best guests. Period. He has one show a week. He always has a guest lined up.
Throw a few at me.
It's always wrestling related.
See, that's what they should be.
Good.
That's who you're talking to.
Even if he's talking to somebody who's in the entertainment world, he usually veers off onto wrestling because they're a wrestling fan. So I would say Jim Ross, as far as guests go, and I've heard him say on his podcast that he's got like 60 interviews already in the can. So with doing one show a week, I mean, he's set for a year plus.
Yeah.
If that's what he's doing. So so good for him. That's the one thing I do like about him. He's had in the past weeks, he's had folks like Superstar Billy Graham, which is interesting because a lot of people don't go back that far to somebody like that. And then he also he'll grab people from the independents or from TNA and things like that, and I think that's good. Speaking of independence, I mean, let's talk about the guy that really started it all and has really been the most visible here in the last 6 months or so, and that's Colt Cabana.
Colt, I listen to for CM Punk and for nothing else. Doesn't have a personality or a voice that makes me want to keep listening.
And that's unfortunate because if you really listen to Colt, you want something that's all about wrestling, his podcasts are about nothing but wrestling.
And I appreciate that, but still, he's not a recognizable name to me outside of podcasting. Mm-hmm. His Punk interview was just fine. It was great because of Punk.
Yeah.
But to me, it was what it was. You know, it was worth listening to. Every wrestling fan, I think, listened to that one. But it never made me want to come back and hear him talk about it more.
Well, I encourage you to listen to more if you can. And here's what Colt does when he does interviews. He will reach out and get some of the most random names in wrestling, too. And some of those are better than the ones where he interviews, say, Stone Cold or Goldberg or somebody like that. When you hear a guy like, like Buddy Landel, who has been everywhere in the wrestling business but just never got the credit. You know what I mean? When he interviews Jamie Dundee, a friend of mine, too. But he's definitely a wild personality, but he's just one of those enigmas in wrestling that,
Sure.
That you have to listen to. Some other people, I mean, there's Dennis Stamp. If you remember the movie Beyond the Mat, Dennis Stamp, the guy that jumps up and down on the trampoline.
He's in his underwear holding light weights.
And he doesn't get booked, and then ends up reffing the match with it. I mean, just personalities like that, that's what makes Colt's interviews so good.
Have you heard Taz's?
I have heard Taz's. I've heard a couple of his, and
again, I won't. Taz
pretty good.
I don't care for Taz's vocal presentation. Listening to him in commentary, I just can't stand him there. I love him as a wrestler. If he was coming back for something, he's like Tough Enough, cool. If he was coming back to work, cool. With a microphone, I'm gonna pass.
Yeah, and then just some other people to throw out. Goldberg, not a wrestling podcast. Haven't really listened to it. He's got one on Podcast One. I'm not a fan. Roddy Piper, that's hit and miss. Roddy Piper
might be a lot for me.
Might be the worst interviewer I've ever heard in my life. But he's Roddy Piper, you know?
Okay.
So I mean, he does have great guests, but man, that can get.
Are there some more I don't even know about?
There's more that I'm sure I don't know about, but I'm telling you, there's.
Give Sheik a podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
Why does he not have one?
Here's somebody else, and this may be possible, and if by some chance you're watching in Fort Branch, Tracy Smothers, I will run the podcast for you. I want you to bring in the people you know and do a podcast, because that would be gold.
That would be cool.
So anyway, there you go. Some podcasts. Let us know which podcast that you like, what you enjoy listening to, and if you haven't listened, listen, and then tell us what you think.
Also, we could probably tell people now what the code word is.
Absolutely.
For the quiz today. The code word is podcast.
Yeah, pretty easy. Put it in. Again, if you're watching YouTube, just click the link below and enter it. If you're watching on one of the websites, you will see the box below where you can enter that word for a chance to win 2 tickets to Smackdown in the Enhancement Talent section. And if you are the grand prize winner, you are being upgraded to the front row. You are getting a prize pack that includes some WWE merch, t-shirts and stuff, a chair, a souvenir chair from WWE, and you will get to come in here the morning of SmackDown into the radio stations and hang out while we interview New Day.
New Day.
That's right.
Now, sometimes those do get changed.
Yeah.
But we'll have somebody, is what we understand. And we believe right now it's going to be all 3 members of New Day.
And you'll be able to be here while we interview them. So there you go.
And look at this, we're having a return because Kofi's been on the show before.
That's true. Safety first, Kofi.
That's right. I don't think we've forgotten about that. So thank you very much for watching. Make sure you subscribe. Let us know what you think about the new intro, what you think about wrestling podcasts. And of course, don't forget to enter the word podcast into the box there. For myself, the Rob.
Big packed day. Hey, I'm Aaron Cornish. Have a good one.